I submit to you that if the President of the United States and the Secretary of State don't know why the hell we're there and they change their mind every minute, that none of the above is true. The truth is, a legal precedent has to be established that says that the United Nations is the ruler of the world. It has to be a legal precedent that all nation states submit to the will of the United Nations and give up their sovereignty to the United Nations and submit to the rule of the law of the world, which is the United Nations Charter and the resolutions passed by the United Nations. And the United States military is acting as the police force for the United Nations to establish that legal precedent. And Bush has said on television, no nation can ever again stand against a world united. And if they try it, the same thing will happen to them. Margaret Thatcher was the last world leader who was opposed to the one world government. And she is no longer the Prime Minister of England because of that. I'm going to tell you now that the only obstacle to the New World Order coming together at this moment is the right of the American people to keep and bear arms. That is why there is such an effort to take your guns away from you. You see, the intent of the Second Amendment, the second article and amendment to the Constitution, was not so that we could go hunting. It was not to protect the possessions in your home or to protect you from burglars. The intent of our forefathers in establishing the second article and amendment to the Constitution was that as long as every American owned a weapon, whether they ever fired it or not, our government could never oppress us just with the knowledge that we all had that weapon in our closet. That's the reason. That's why every time you see a bill to take weapons away from the American people defeated in Congress, 4 more are introduced immediately. It's a never-ending battle. That's why they lie about the statistics. The truth is, in a town where everybody owns a weapon and everybody knows it, there is almost no crime. I'm going to show you this next videotape while you're thinking about that, to show you that these craft do in fact exist. This was taken above the Nevada test site. This is what's called a cigar-shaped craft. They are very large. They're also called motherships. Every time they're seen, except in this photograph, usually you see other smaller craft exiting and entering these craft, like scout ships or something. I don't know what you would call it. But it's absolutely incredible. This piece of footage you're going to see is so rare. I've only seen one other piece of film footage on this particular type of vehicle, and it wasn't even 1/3 as good as what you're going to see here. So what you're going to see is extremely rare, and you probably be a long time before you ever see any footage like this again. It's very difficult to get. Go ahead, there's no sound. Kill the lights, please. Now you can see the craft just below the tip of the white cloud. And if you watch, it's going to move from right to left and then turn into the clouds and disappear. We were approximately 15 miles from that location when this footage was taken, which means that what you're looking at there is approximately 2 to 3 miles in length. That's very impressive, and to me it's very exciting that someone can make something that flies in the air that's 2 to 3 miles in length. That is the actual time that you see there. Those are the actual seconds passing. It's almost gone now. Now it's into the cloud bank. You can stop the tape. Okay, if you'll turn on the slide projector, we'll get into some of these slides. I'm going to be going very fast through these slides. Some of you have seen a lot of them before. You're going to see some very startling information here. You're going to see some documentation that's going to prove to you that the government's been lying to you for many years. You're going to see some documentation that proves who I am and what I'm all about. After I left the military, ladies and gentlemen, on December the 11th, 1975, I attempted to leak the material that I knew to the press. I was attacked twice. I've lost my leg. I've had my skull caved in. I kept silent for 16 years, during which time I was the head of the mixed gas deep saturation diving department of the College of Oceaneering. I was the executive director of Adelphi Business College. I was the executive director of Pacific Coast Technical Institute, the executive director of the National Technical College. I was the national marketing coordinator for United Education and Software, and I owned a gallery and studio of fine art in Long Beach, California. Is it on?
It's on. Maybe you just go forward one.
I'm hitting it. Something's wrong. There we go.
You want to go forward?
No, that's the wrong. I want to go forward. There we go. Okay. This is a letter from Jim Joyner, who's the head of the mixed gas deep saturation diving department of the College of Oceaneering. And basically what he's saying in this letter is I worked for him, I was the head of the department, I was an instructor, and I'm a good guy. This is not working.
It's not. Go ahead and push it. Just say forward and he'll push the button.
Okay. This is a piece of research that was done by Bob Exler. In his own research, he verified something that I had not told anybody, and that was that when I was with the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, I worked directly under Bobby Ray Inman. He verified all of this and verifies that I was there, and that I had reported seeing UFO-related documents under their command. And it goes through to outline Bobby Ray Inman's career path, which is incredible. He believes that Bobby Ray Inman is very much connected with the cover-up group, is one of those in the know, knows everything about the alien situation. Born April 4th, 1931, graduated from college at the age of 19 with the BA from the University of Texas in 1950. He entered the United States Navy in 1952, advancing to the rank of Admiral in 1981. 20 years after entering the Navy, he graduated from the National War College in 1972. He was the assistant to the Naval Attaché in Stockholm from 65 to 67, and no records are available for his service assignments from 68 through 71. From 72 to 74, he was assistant to the Chief of Staff of Intelligence Office of the Commander of the Pacific Fleet. Inman was the director of Naval Intelligence from 1974 to 1976 before moving on to become the vice director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. You can see what he did. I mean, he skipped over some pretty senior people, and he's going right straight to the top. And only people who are considered to be of the inner circle do that. He became the director of the National Security Agency in 1977, holding that post until 1981 when he attained the rank of Admiral and became the deputy director of the Central Intelligence Agency. He retired from government service in 1982 and became the CEO for MCC. Remember what I was telling you about implants? Microelectronics and Computer Technology Corporation. MCC is a private sector joint venture supported by and share funded by the government and corporate shareholders. The venture was motivated by the Japanese fifth-generation artificial intelligence computer project. This is a letter from Bob. Remember I told you Bob Swan was the one who talked me into going back? after I went AWOL. Later, I got married on June the 2nd, 1972. On June the 1st, 1972, I sat down with Bob and a bottle of scotch and I told him everything I knew and gave him a set of documents to prove it. Bob acknowledges that conversation in this letter. He acknowledges what I told him about alien installations on the moon, about the Kennedy assassination, about the fact that I gave him documents that were highly classified, and he says that he doesn't know what happened to them, he doesn't have them anymore, and it's exactly what he should say. Next. And next. This is a document known as the Eisenhower Briefing Document. It was brought out by a research team of Moore, Chandray, and Friedman. William Moore, with Charles Berlitz, wrote a book called The Roswell Incident, which was the first legitimate work on the so-called crash of the flying saucer near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. This document is a fraud, and I can prove it to you very easily. But it has a lot of truth in it. In fact, the document itself reads as if it were taken right out of Moore's book, The Roswell Incident. All of the designations on it are legitimate. Top secret and magic was the same designation given to the material that I saw when I was with Naval Intelligence. Magic means Magi controlled. Magi is the majority agency for joint intelligence, which reports only to a top secret group called Majesty 12, also known as Majority 12. It is made up of 19 members. There are 6 from government, 6 from the Executive Committee on the Council on Foreign Relations, 6 from the Jason Scientific Group administered by the MITRE Corporation and Dr. Edward Teller. This briefing document calls it Operation Majestic 12. The documents that I saw said that it was Operation Majority. Also, look at the date, 18 November 1952. Eisenhower was not yet president, and if this is truly one of the highest held secrets in this country, he would never have been exposed to this information until he actually took the oath of president. He was not even in government service at the time he was elected. He was the president of a college. Next, please. I can tell you that of those listed there, those names, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter was the director of the CIA when this group was supposedly formed. If in fact it was formed at that time, he would have definitely been a member. Secretary James B. Forrestal, according to the documentation that I saw, was a member and was the man responsible for the operation of the recovery of the craft at Roswell, New Mexico. And it is really his story that is outlined in Whitley Strieber's book called Majestic. The main character in that book was an abductee, carried the bodies from the crash site to Los Alamos National Laboratory. In the documentation that I saw, that actually did happen at James B. Forrestal. Next slide, please. And next slide. We don't have time to go through every sentence and every paragraph, so I'm just going to hit the major points. Next. Next. On this page, you can see, without any doubt, that this document is a fraud. In enumeration of attachments, you'll see attachment A, special classified executive order number 092447 TS/EO. TS is top secret, EO is executive order. Executive orders are numbered consecutively from president to president, from executive order to executive order, no matter who occupies the White House, for the purpose of continuity and record keeping. Truman wrote executive orders in the 9,000 range. Eisenhower wrote executive orders in the 10,000 range, and so on and so forth. President Nixon wrote in the 11,000 range, and some of the ones that he wrote were actually signed by Carter. This is 92,447. Any way that you look at it, it can only be a date. 09, which would be what month? September the 24th, 1947. Executive orders are not listed by date, they are listed by number. Next slide, please. This is a memorandum for the Secretary of Defense. This also is a fraud. Next slide, please. This is legitimate. This came directly from the National Archives. It is legitimate. One thing that makes it important is it does mention NSC, National Security Council, / MJ12 Special Studies Project. In the documentation that I saw, Majesty 12, also known as Majority 12 for security reasons, where I got the name Majority 12 is that they had to have a majority of 12 votes to carry on any motion or any operation or anything that they wanted to do. If they didn't have 12 votes, they couldn't do it. It was abbreviated MJ12. I also saw documents that there was a special studies group made up of scientists and prominent people belonging to a secret society called the Jason Society, which actually makes up the core of the Council on Foreign Relations. And under them is a Jason scientific group administered by the MITRE Corporation to study all the facts, lies, evidence, disinformation of the alien question and arrive at what the truth was. It was a 3-year study. Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski headed the study group for the first 18 months. The second 18 months was headed by Dr. Henry Kissinger. During that time, Dr. Henry Kissinger, and this is historical record, wouldn't even speak to anyone. He was gone, get up early, he'd leave, he'd come back very late at night, didn't talk to anybody, didn't care about anybody. He was so engrossed in whatever he was doing that it was like he was living in another world. His wife actually divorced him for this. So it fits. If he was really studying the alien question, I think that's the only thing that I can think of that would engross me so much that I would neglect my wife. Something of such historical and monumental consequence as that. Next slide, please. This, nobody knows if this is real or not, but this is one of the documentation that Moore, Channery, and Friedman came out with. Next slide. This is a letter from Jesse Marcel Jr. In the Roswell crash in 1947, Major Jesse Roswell was an intelligence officer attached to Roswell Army Air Force Base, and he was the one who was sent out to check out this wreckage that Mr. Brazel reported on his ranch. When he got there, he determined that this wasn't anything he'd ever seen before, didn't know what it was, gathered it all up, put it in his car, took it home, showed it to his wife and child that night, and the following morning took it into the base. That night, when he showed it to his child, Jesse Marcel Jr., interpreted that this was pieces of a flying saucer. Now, I don't know if his father told him it was a flying saucer or not, but I believe that the suggestion was probably planted in the kid's mind because the only thing that the father had was bits and pieces of stuff that looked like tinfoil from cigarette packs and balsa I-beams, although they weren't balsa, it was some kind of metal, but they were very light. Next slide. In this letter, he recounts that he saw the pieces and it wasn't the remains of any kind of aircraft that he knew of and that he thought it was a flying saucer. Next slide. This is the results of an interview from Jesse Marcel himself, the father. The father goes through and he makes several interesting points. He said that he was familiar with all air activities and it was not a weather balloon, nor an aircraft, nor a missile. It was something else and we didn't know what it was. There were just fragments strewn all over the area, about 3/4 of a mile long and several hundred feet wide. We proceeded to pick up the parts of whatever it was and load it in the vehicles. It was one thing obvious to me, that whatever it probably exploded above the ground and was strewn over the ground, traveling in a easterly direction, probably northeast to southwest. We filled the vehicles and then proceeded to come back home to Walker Air Force Base, which is now called, or was then called, Roswell Army Air Force Base, where I was stationed, and that's how it was. Now notice that Jesse Marcel, the father, doesn't say that that was a flying saucer. He just says he didn't know what it was. And that's significant, and it's never been pointed out before. Everybody cites this letter as proof that he picked up pieces of a flying saucer, and that's a lie. He doesn't say that anywhere in this interview. Next page. And he goes on here, and he talks about the metal and the pieces and what it did. He said they tried to burn it, could not be burned. Would not burn. The same with the parchment we had. The metal was so thin, just like the tinfoil in a pack of cigarette paper. I didn't pay too much attention to that at first until one of the boys came to me and said, you know that metal that was in there, I tried to bend that stuff and it won't bend. I even tried it with a sledgehammer. You can't make a dent on it. And he talks about some other things that they did. But nowhere in here is significant. Does he ever say that it was a flying saucer or an extraterrestrial craft? He just says he doesn't know what it was. Next slide, please. And even here, he doesn't say or venture any guess as to what it was. Next slide. This is a letter. This is called the Smith Memo. Smith was a radio engineer for the government of Canada. He came down to Washington to see if he could get the United States government to participate in electromagnetic experiments and experiments involving radio waves and other things of that nature. While he was there, he read a book written by Frank Scully called Behind the Flying Saucers, and he wanted to know if it was real. Scully in his book had said that the government had recovered crashed flying saucers and was hiding this from the public. He went to his embassy, the Canadian embassy in Washington, asked them to find out the truth. The Canadian embassy contacted Dr. Robert Sarbacher, who was a senior scientist working for the Pentagon at that time. And if you'll give me the next slide, this is what Dr. Sarbacher told the Canadian embassy, and they relayed it to Wilbur Smith. A, the matter is the most highly classified subject in the United States government, rating higher than even the H-bomb. B, flying saucers exist. C, their modus operandi is unknown, but concentrated effort is being made by a small group headed by Dr. Vannevar Bush. D, the entire matter is considered by the United States authorities to be of tremendous significance. Again, no mention of extraterrestrial or alien beings. And as you're going to see later, yes, flying saucers did exist. Next slide, please. This is the rest of the Smith memo. It's important that you see the signature and the official stamps and the classifications that were on this thing. It is now declassified. Next slide. At the same time that the government was denying that they were interested in flying saucers or that flying saucers were real or that they were investigating or anything, this poster was on the bulletin boards of Air Force bases everywhere. I remember seeing this for many years on bulletin boards where my father worked. And it says, the first thing up there, UFOs, serious business, and outlines the fact that every base must have an officer designated to specifically investigate UFOs and report the evidence. And down here, it tells him what he has to have. And one of the things is a Geiger counter, a magnifying glass. I don't know what he's going to do with that. And have a source for containers in which to store samples. Camera, binoculars, and other things. Next slide, please. This is a news release. At the same time that poster was on the bulletin boards of Air Force bases, the Air Force was issuing news releases saying that we're not investigating flying saucers, there are no such thing, what you're seeing is weather balloons, and we don't even want to know about it. Next slide. And next, that's the last of it. One of the things they did though, that last one, I should have held it there, but that's okay. They said that, it's possible it could be a foreign country experimenting with some weird aircraft flying over our airspace, but of course they couldn't possibly be doing that. Next. At the same time, this poster was also on military bases, and one was the winner of Poster of the Month. Next slide. These are cows. But I wanted to show you what they look like in case some of you haven't been out of the city in a while. Next slide. In some cities that I go to, there's really a reason for doing that. I wanted to show you this. There's something happening with this phenomenon that is absolutely incredible. Everywhere on this slide where you see an M, there has been a classic case of cattle mutilation. I'm going to describe to you what a classic case of cattle mutilation is so that you will know in your mind what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the lips on one side of the face gone. The jaw, the flesh and the muscle on the lower side of one of the jaw, lower jaw, gone, stripped to the bone. The tongue missing, one eye missing, one ear cored out and missing. Usually a 6-inch diameter patch of skin somewhere on the animal has been cut out. If it's a cow, either the entire udder or a portion of the udder is missing. The rectum is cored out in a perfect cone shape. The sexual organs are always missing. If the cow is pregnant, sometimes the fetus of the calf is gone, but the fetal bag is not open or cut and has not been invaded in any manner. Now that's incredible. But the most significant thing is that all the blood is drained from the animal's body with no vascular collapse, and there's not a drop of blood anywhere. There are no cigarette butts on the ground, there are no tire tracks, there are no shoe prints, there are no footprints, there are no gum wrappers, there is nothing. The government says that coyotes did that. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I know who or what it was, but I do know one thing, it wasn't coyotes. And I also know that our medical personnel, with the best surgical tools at their disposal, cannot make or duplicate the same cuts that are bloodless, that seem to be literally between the cells. There is no blood in any of the wounds. There are always 2 holes on the neck of the animal. Now, we got very curious about why would these specific parts of the animals be missing? And we came up with some things that are very interesting. Dust collects in the ear. Things that float around in the atmosphere collect in the ear. The lips touch the grass and the earth, so does the lower jaw. The eyes exposed to the atmosphere. The rectum is where most of the heavy impurities, the things that cannot be digested, that are poison to the system, collect, and that's why people get rectum cancer and colon cancer from these things. The sexual organs would show genetic damage. And where does radioactivity show up first in a mammal? In the milk. So then we got very interested in where these mutilations occurred, what time of year, which way was the wind blowing, and what was upwind from these locations. And we found in every single instance there was a nuclear site of some kind, a power plant, a weapons base, a weapons storage installation, weapons manufacturing plant, a testing area, missile stockpile, uranium mines, and tailing piles, waste disposal areas. In every single instance were upwind from these sites. From that, I deduce that whoever is doing it is trying to find out how much radiation has leaked into the atmosphere, the food chain, and the groundwater, and what is it doing to the living mammals in its path. The fact that they leave these carcasses laying out there is an act of terrorism. Literally. I mean, if you want to check for something in these animals, that's fine. But there's no reason why you couldn't take it somewhere else, chop it up, dispose of it, or eat it, or whatever. Why is it being left on the ground? That's an act of terrorism. It's done intentionally to scare people. Why? Maybe to create an alien threat from outer space. Maybe because aliens don't eat beef. Next slide, please. Sometimes these are seen in the sky over the areas where these things occur. Next.